So, it's getting quite, yeah. So, warm welcome to you all. So, I'm very glad you are all here to join us here in our office and online. I guess I have to look in the camera. Greetings to all over the world, I guess. So my name is Sascha Klein from Pfeiffer Klein Architects, and I'm already said I'm very glad. So Kevin, you can't see him right now, but soon. We met each other in our first lecture in July by Van Bo. He's also here in the audience today. Hi, Van Bo.
Hello.
So Kevin and I met for the first time there, and he approached me and was so excited and enthusiastic about the format of this lecture that he asking me that we should do it again. So, and we always looking for inspirational people who can speak, and I spontaneously asked Kevin to have the next lecture for us, and he immediately said yes. So now we are all here, and the topic he has given us today, from waste to architecture, sustainable building and the future of cities, is not only exciting for us but also especially important in today's world with the current climate crisis and the scarcity of resources and the urgent need to build more sustainability. It's more important than ever to look at new ideas and concepts. Kevin's work shows how valuable buildings projects can be created from perceived waste, giving us valuable inspiration for the future of construction. We look forward to the new impulses Kevin will give us today, and invite you to join us afterwards to exchange ideas and discuss the future of sustainability architecture with Kevin. And now I would like to hand you over to Kevin Kimwelle. So,
thank you. Thank you very much. So as Sascha said, when I came and I had Van Bo's presentation, I was very curious, obviously, and I was even more blown away to see how you could use small spaces. I'm currently living in suitcases because I'm living in between cities, so it was very, very, very much applicable. In South Africa, we've been, like the rest of the world, asking ourselves and trying to figure out how we can deal with waste. Currently, waste from the construction industry, 40% of it, 40% of waste in landfills is actually from construction industry. It's a big percentage in South Africa, and it depends from which part of the world you are, and also it depends from which part of South Africa you're in. And it's a big deal. It's a big problem. Let me just maximize my screen. It's a big problem, and my research essentially and architecture has been evolving around this idea of us rethinking what waste is and possibly even absorbing it and reusing it. So theoretically, imagine if we stopped mining and we started mining back from waste, and we reused that waste, would give climate crisis, the planet, a chance to breathe a bit, right? And then recover. So the idea of reusing waste is actually quite critical and can play a major role in regenerative architecture and giving the planet an opportunity to recover. So my work essentially looks at waste, not necessarily from the construction industry only, but also from the motor car industry, I'm curious about fashion, etc., etc. So I've been working in different projects, which I'll take you through, right from the smallest one to a slightly bigger one. And through all these projects, you'll see familiar strings, which is, again, reuse of waste material. So waste pickers are superheroes with the worst superpower. Why? Because they do us a favor. They sort out our waste, they try and make a living out of our waste, and we never really recognized them, especially in Africa, where we don't have such elaborate recycling systems. So waste pickers tend to be, a certain kind of people. And people confuse waste pickers to drug dealers, druggies and guys who are just in the streets without realizing it's actually a trade. Anyway, so I met Kusta Moko, a waste collector in Port Elizabeth, and he used to move that amount of waste every day, every second day, from the urban side, from the urban parts of the city and the township to a recycling facility, and he was actually making a living out of it. He was able to support a daughter, he had a partner, and he had 2 dogs, a lion and a lady. So he had a life that he was living off, but the problem was that the waste carts kept getting knocked all the time by trucks, by cars and everything. And we realized one thing was for sure, with this kind of amount on the road, everybody's in a hurry, it's traffic jam time. People are not necessarily seeing his value. So the intervention here is we tracked down Kusta for about 6-7 months of just following him, just trying to understand what he did. And just seeing the path that he uses and the routes that he uses made us realize what the challenges were, beyond just being seen or being perceived, right? So I went to his home. I realized he's actually a brocolier. Brocolier is someone who collects material and builds his own houses and things like that. He's a shoemaker, he's a cobbler, and he can actually repair bikes. So he himself is also an asset because he's not only helping the city in recycling and things like that, but he's also able to make a living out of it. He uses the waste to do barter trade. So barter trade is when you give up your waste and you get material, things like food, clothing, shoes for his kids, etc., etc. But for the money, he used to sew together shoes, repair bikes. So I followed Kusta. I understood what the challenges were by following him, and this is me being an observer without the typical analytical architect mind of trying to solve a problem, right? So 6 months of just nothing, just following the guy, observing him, looking at the distances he's going, understanding what the challenges were. We saw his home, that's him there, his wife at the background. And what we did, just give me 1 second there, what we did there is, having understood what that challenge was, I'm going to play you this video, is we took 3 bicycles. 1 bicycle that he liked, and the other 2 are children's bicycle, kiddies' bikes, and we totally dismantled them. And from understanding what bikes do, which is quite obvious from an architect or an engineer, we then created a waste bicycle, 2 kinds of waste bicycle. One was a waste cut so that he could walk with it. So that's it there. And we even put his image and his identity on the waste bike. And we even put a number plate on the waste bike. And this here, he was able to go with it within the townships, right? And then we created a larger one, which was the bike itself, so that he could move from the township and the suburb areas into the recycling area, because he has to go through main roads for that. And what that did is it gave him visibility. It also gave him pride, because everybody was seeing this waste bike and waste cut that has his name to it. And this is an important factor. Give me a second. Let me go back to this. So that there is Kusta's waste bike, and what we did is the front half of it, a bike he chose, his own style, his own design. Yeah, so he liked that bike. He identified with it. That's what he wanted. Personally, I would have preferred a mountain bike, but then this is where co-creation and collaboration comes in, right? So that's what he likes. And then the back side of it, what we did is we used waste from the motor car industry. In this particularly, we used Isuzu Motors. So we went into their waste recycling center and we pulled out different parts. We pulled out lights, and we were able to create this waste bike, which over here I'm kind of trying to explain to him how to use it. But the change of mindset, suddenly people can see him. He's got lights, he's got a vehicle, it's got a number plate, and just seeing how people transformed and started reconsidering who Kusta is and what he does for us, right? So this is now moving from a waste picker to township spaces. You have me talking about township spaces. In South Africa, since '94, the government of South Africa has been trying its best to provide as much housing as possible. But you can imagine the lag, and the population is growing. So not everybody is able to get a house in time. You have total large communities in the peri-urban spaces that do not have housing. We were approached by one of these communities with an NGO to actually build them a facility. The NGO that approached us first wanted that the facility, because they were Christian-based, they wanted it to be a church. When we did our asset-based community mapping process, after about a year, we realized actually a church is a good idea. A soup kitchen, which is when you provide meals for kids, is also a good idea. But how do we elevate that and create social economic impact? And what we realized is because this area did not have any formal housing, there was a lack of community spaces, which are very important for gathering, for engagement, for meeting. So we took other functions and we brought them together and we created a multi-purpose hall that on a Monday to Friday could become a creche. On a Saturday, it could be anything from political functions, from weddings, funerals, it could play different roles, youth, kids playing, etc., etc. And then on a Sunday, it could be what the NGO wanted, which is a place of worship, and the soup kitchen was coming in. But also by engaging with the municipality, the clinic, mobile clinic, started stopping here for the kids to get their vaccinations, etc., etc. So I'm not going to bore you so much about the architecture of it, seeing that you're architects, but the impressive thing about it is that from the asset-based community mapping process is we realized that this community had an asset that they did not know. So when I looked around, I was seeing a lot of shacks made out of pallets. And I was like, where are these pallets coming from? Who's designing this? Who's building it? So we tracked all the waste and we realized it was coming from the industrial area. And we went to the two companies that were producing these pallets. In fact, one of them was Coca-Cola. We told them about this project that we had and we asked them to donate these pallets. We also spoke to General Motors, who were on the peri-urban space that so Port Elizabeth has a very large industrial area. So we moved from the community and the NGO and the municipality in understanding what the planning of the area is to the corporates who are around that area who are actually donating this material to these communities so that they could build shelter. And by looking at the architecture they had, because when we asked them who's building, who's designing, they did not see any architecture. They thought, oh, we're just building a temporary shelter. And essentially we took that very same material. The other thing is we realized, obviously because this is a very depressive space, there's a lot of alcoholism. So beer bottles, wine bottles, everything everywhere. So waste was becoming a big issue. So this project came from trying to encourage recycling and reuse of materials. And, that was me, sorry, forgive me for that. And let me go back. So what we did there is we built a building. Give me a second. Let me switch that to do not disturb till this evening. Let me put it on sleep. All right. Okay. So we built a building out of the very same materials that they have, pallets and wine bottles. And this is where the R&D comes in place. So we realized, obviously, for you to build with bottles, you have to make the structure stand. So you're looking at this wall here is about 2,500 wine bottles. And still, so there's the engineering part of it, but you still have to make it beautiful and you have to make it impressive. And I'll talk about beauty shortly. And then what we did also is we realized that the structures were failing at the bottom. The wood structures are always failing at the bottom. So we lifted up the building, created passive architecture. So the building is all lifted high, air goes down, air goes at the side. So the building is able to cool down. So in summer, it's actually cool and warm. In winter, it's warm. Then we created two skins of pallets, an outer layer, which is what you're seeing, and then a thick plastic in the middle, and then an inner layer. So it's almost like a double cavity wall. But the other thing we realized is that the weakness was always at the bottom. So to prevent that, we created a splash area. So those roof sheets that you're seeing at the bottom. And then we used crushed glass for the foundation. And what that does, the water goes through the concrete so that the water is not held. Because there's always structural failure at that point there. So the idea was to really make the building as resilient and stand as much as possible. This is when it's being used as a creche. The other thing that we realized is that so there's one tap for about 50 households, and the teachers were always distracted, following the kids all the time. So what we did is we engaged with another company that was creating these towels, and essentially creating these toilets. The idea is that the teachers coming in the morning put in water in the cisterns, and the kids are able to flush, and they're able to focus on the kids instead of all the time looking after the children, etc. And what that also helps is the recycling of the water, the flushing of the water. The teachers only need to go to collect the water maybe twice a day roughly. So we used what was already existing. This image here was selected as a finalist for Design Indaba Most Beautiful Object in South Africa. And this is a big statement because for me, it's a resolution of design and beauty and architecture, because when you look at this, you don't think those are wine bottles. You think, oh, that's interesting, that's exciting. What is it? How are the bottles standing? So you're able to see a very common material, but you're able to appreciate it as a new material in a new way. But you can also imagine the value it gave that community, because this is the day-to-day material, and suddenly it can make a building. So they start rethinking the very same material that is in the environment. In fact, from this project, we were able to incubate 3 businesses. The lady was already collecting the bottles, so we were able to create for our studio, and she ran with it, and she made a business out of it. The guy who helped us building, so we also extended a studio for him, and he was able to grow. Actually, he grew the most. He was able to employ about 6 youth from that area, to work with him. And then another lady, we created a spaza shop for her. I don't only work in poor areas in South Africa, because many times people think waste means poverty, means impoverished people, etc. Actually, for the Alliance Française Fête de la Musique, the French music festival session, we took on the idea of the green agenda, because this is now in the middle of the city, in a residential area. And right from the beginning of this festival, our agenda was the green portfolio. Make people understand they can do recycling right from home. So you can tackle recycling and the green agenda from industry, you can tackle it from architecture, but you can also tackle it from active citizenship. And the idea is to encourage it from the home areas. So this is a street festival, it's in the residential area, and as you can see, the poster itself, the first thing you realize is the poster is a palette. And we start the conversation right there. So as soon as the poster went out and people started looking at it, they were wondering, what is this about? All the furniture during the festival was recycled. And we collected about, in architecture firms, we have these tubes, or in printout areas, you have these tubes, A1 tubes that come out with paper. For about 4 or 5 months, we collected a lot of these tubes. We filled in a garage room, and we cut these tubes and we created the main stage. So that there is a structure about 15 meters by 12 meters, so it's the full road, and that was the stage of the festival. And just the impression of people coming to see a very familiar material that they immediately recognize, and they're like, but what is this thing? And so you can imagine in the morning, it's this netting that is coming up, and then as the night comes and they start realizing the lights playing, etc., etc. So it brings the conversation of recycling to the forefront again in terms of recycling in communities and engaging communities. For Gogo Selena is about 80, maybe 85 right now. She was born in this structure. She lived in this structure since 1954, I think. So this building is probably 1949. That's the structure there. That's the original structure. And her actual daughter died in childbirth, so she was taking care of her granddaughter. This is one of those projects we were called by the community to actually step in and help. Those other projects that you saw, somehow I went out to the community or I engaged the community. This was different because the community came. And the reason why they came was the roof of this structure, actually the ceiling was collapsing and they did not know what to do. And because she's not in the RDP system or the system for social housing for her to get free housing, she was not eligible for a house. So, well, we came in and we looked at the space. This is where she lived, and we got even more concerned by the then 16-year-old daughter, a granddaughter, because she was living in this space, taking care of her grandmother, cooking and sleeping and eating in one space, not having the space to really study. So what we did there is we decided, all right, we're gonna go, even though the problem is just the ceiling, we're gonna rethink this. So we pulled down the ceiling to see what the problem was, and we realized actually it was structural failure of the timber because the building was very old. So the roof was actually collapsing. What we did there is we decided we're going to take off the roof, fix the room, but also extend the house so that we could give the two ladies a home, especially when we realized that they were not eligible for a house. Anyway, so that's us. We went to our friends Isuzu Motors. They have collapsible shipping containers. So collapsible shipping containers come from Japan essentially with material, with a vehicle, etc., and then or an engine. And what you do is when you're done with them, you flat pack them and then you send them back so they're able to be used. But what we did is we recycled those. And what we did is we took all the wooden members within those and we created new beams and columns. So we laminated them, which is what you're seeing there. And then we took the skin of the collapsible shipping container and we used it on the outside. We also took the OS boards and we used it in the inside. And we took freight containers, usually have this foam inside them. To control the cooling. So freight, remember Port Elizabeth again is an industrial city. It has a lot of these freight vehicles that are transporting fruit, food and all that. So we took that and we cut it up and we insulated this house. So this is us working. Oh, by the way, this is during COVID, in the middle of COVID. So we only allowed 5 people maximum on site. We have to create the building, prefabricate it and then bring it to site. We have to make sure that the old lady doesn't get COVID. So it was just madness. And this is one of those nights we've just pushed the project. We're like, we want to get the project completed. So what we did is we restored the old structure. Actually, let me play a video of it just to show you what it looks like. So here we are at Selina's site. On my left, you see the old house. This is where she's lived for her entire life, basically. She moved here at about the 50s, 60s. And behind me is the new structure that we're building now. So this here is actually the dining area. So dining area, a bit of a kitchen on this side, and then looking out, the balcony and veranda. And then a very interesting feature of this house is actually the atrium. Because the design is meant to be passive in design, and which means it uses natural lighting, it uses very little energy. The carbon footprint is meant to be as small as possible. We're gonna cut a door, a big door here into the existing structure so that you can move from the lounge through the corridor into the living area, into the kitchen on that side. And then this here are the 2 bedrooms for Selina and the granddaughter. So, and then this is one of the secrets of this house. It is very well insulated. So you can see the thermal insulation held in between the sheets and wood. So this area is very special. It's actually Selina's granddaughter's study area. So it's elevated high up, a bit of quiet space. And then underneath it, this section here is where the bathroom, shower, and wash and basin will be. Nice big window on that section.
I've been working with Kevin from 2017. We've been doing community projects, started from Droslovo until now we're in Woma, and we're still trying to inspire and do what we're doing. It's the reaction after we've built or completed a mission, like Mamu Selina, the first reaction when she saw the house, that was fulfilling for me.
It took Kevin and Sitlibo 4 months to build the new house and then another 12 months to complete the inspirational project.
What you're seeing behind is finally a result of all the effort that many people have come into to create. So this is the dining area of the house. As you can see, it opens up to the north, and behind me is the kitchen, which is actually quite a simple kitchen. It's made up of chipboard and recycled wood. It's an open plan layout, just simply because it's what we could afford. Then we come to the living room. The lounge is actually the original part of this house. This is where the ceiling was collapsing, and what we did here is we actually raised the house higher so that there was a double volume, which means the house is much cooler. We retained the fireplace, which is behind me. The couch that you're seeing here is also made out of cassettes, which is very interesting because it's quite comfortable. 3 chairs to make a sofa, which is from recycled material too. This is Gogo Selina's bedroom. And then this is Michelle's bedroom. The 2 bedrooms are actually identical. They consist of a single bed and a whole wardrobe section, which is also made up of recycled material from metal and wood. And behind me is Michelle's study area. It's a special space. You have to go up through a cut ladder, and then on top is a small space which provides maximum privacy and good space just mentally for Michelle to be able to concentrate on her studies.
Michelle is an amazing young woman who's currently in matric and has a great love for theatre. She has been able to grow up fast and is a protector for her grandmother.
I love my study room. And I love the fact that it is upstairs, so I would see Gogo when she's calling me, and I would hear her and run downstairs to help her.
Wanting to ensure Gogo Selina's prosperity, Kevin established a vegetable garden with help from donations. He was inspired by noticing that Selina had green fingers and had already planted flowers to beautify her garden.
The back is very interesting. The floor is made up of recycled bottles, beer bottles, wine bottles, any kind of bottles. And a garden which Gogo Selina can now maintain with the help of Michelle. So 4 peach trees, there's spring onion, there's spinach, there's beetroot. And the idea is just to make Gogo Selina a little bit more self-resilient by growing her own food and being able to eat from her garden.
There is also a future plan to install rainwater tanks for a more sustainable source of water.
I just want to thank everyone who took part in building this house. Wow, it has reached more than what I expected. It is so beautiful. No words can describe how I feel.
So Gogo Selina represents an old generation of South Africans who have kind of been forgotten. And really seeing this dream come true, it's mind-blowing, and it's a new home. Skip this one. So let me go back to the presentation quickly. So the entire house, again, is recycled, as you can see there. And this is her with the guest. Oh, by the way, the floor too, we salvaged the floor from a second-hand, we call them pawn shops, so second-hand place. We bought the floor. All the plumbing was recycled. The only thing we didn't recycle in this building was the electrical ducting, the wire that goes in, and the roof sheets for the roof, because we could not get a new one, and we needed a guarantee because the structure underneath it is very vulnerable. We wanted a new roof to make sure that it survives. So that's why we do what we do. It was really inspiring for us because right now Michelle is actually doing her BTech in electrical and IT. So she's grown up to be to fulfill the promise that we thought we could create in her life by being able to go to university. So this is 2021, 2020, and just seeing and tracking her and following up and seeing how she's performing. And that's the social economic impact part of the project. This is a bit of an anatomy of the design, us being mostly architects. So as you can see, the roof sheet is new, light comes through the middle of the house, and then you can see the 3 layers. So the structural component is actually laminated wood that we laminated ourselves from dismantling these shipping containers, but we knew that they would be vulnerable to water. That there is the old structure, original structure that we restored. So from an architecture point, from a heritage point, and then extending that into a new structure. I'll skip, well, maybe it's here. Let me just talk about it. So we have done conventional buildings. This was for Masifunde. This is one of those projects we tried really hard to convince the client to go recycling, and there was a bit of a hesitation from a funder point of view, both from various aspects. And what we did there is we retained the internal walls by using collapsible shipping containers. By using pallets. So we took the pallets. These walls can actually move, so they are studded walls, and this bottom area can be, if they need it, it can be one room. And then the bricks, we pushed the contractor here to recycle as much brick as possible. I will jump to another project, and my last project for today. So we've moved from a waste picker to a community to a house, and I say a house is very difficult to do from recycled material because it's very personal. Yeah, it has to work 100%, and usually that's where the barrier is. We then were able to create for the waterfront in Cape Town a recycled structure. Now, first of all, we were very surprised that we could be called in to build such a structure in Africa's most expensive land per square meter. That's the V&A waterfront. So already it tells a story of challenging the status quo. Because, as I said, many times people think recycled material is for a certain group of people, etc. But we were able to turn that upside down. And our challenge here was, all right, we're going to do the structure, but how do we take that even further? And what we did here is we decided to first create recycled material from the building from 98% recycled material. For us to do that, it means then we would have to find every single material to be from various sites within this precinct. So you can hear a bit of an echo. All right. So what we did is, with the collaboration of the client, over 3 years to build this small structure, we collected, demolished, we went to every demolition site within that precinct, and we pulled out as much as we could. Now you can imagine these are buildings that are going down very quickly, and we have to deal with demolishers, with contractors, etc. And we were able to pull as much as we could, right? So those are all the recycling facilities within this precinct. But we also had another ambition. We decided that we're going to create a zero landfill structure with the highest possible carbon footprint saving. To do that, it means you have to think about energy. And while we were tackling energy, we realized actually South Africa had a drought. What if we decided that this building does not use municipal water? So suddenly we have 3 or 4 tiers. Carbon, we're looking at the carbon footprint, we're looking at the energy footprint, we're also looking at the water. So we decided no using of any tap water or drinkable water. And that was what created the ambition of this project. Of course, because of the bar being set so high, I mean, the negotiations with the city, it took a while. I mean, this building, I think we submitted it thrice, negotiating with the city, with the municipality, trying to see how we could create this structure out of this recycled material. We then had to, this is almost basic training of everybody, the client, the contractors, ourselves, on how we were tackling this material. And this is a bit of the processing. So explaining to people very simple things like what is going where and why, and what is coming from where. So we knew that all our roof sheets were coming for those 3 sites. We knew our RC bars were coming from that side, the wine bottles, bricks, etc. So we had different demolition sites that we could harvest different materials. And the trick there was to ensure as the building was coming down, we try salvage and clean it and get rid of things that we don't need as early as possible, so that we can then bring them to a site where we can sort out everything and it goes into a library, right? And this is roughly the inventory that we created. So we had about 1,017 pieces of wood, we had paving, we had roof sheets, 174 pieces, again, very basic. And this is meant to be like foolproof, that anyone can understand what we're doing and why, because at times what I realized was, as architects, we forget that the man in the street doesn't necessarily understand our language, you know, our symbols and everything. So I really was trying to make it as basic as possible. This is a bit of the energy or the carbon footprint. So you can see we are tracking all the vehicles. There was a vehicle on the 20th of April. It was a small truck. That is the model of the engine. That's the number plate. It's a diesel engine. It came from a salvaging yard, which is 18 kilometers. It carried 2 beams, 12 they were in used condition. So essentially, we are tracking everything from material to water to brick to sand to cement to. So I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but the idea is that we were following everything from where it was coming and where it is going to the building, because that's where the carbon capture is. Then we got into the exercise of trying to educate the people that we were working with, including my own team and the client and the community around, on what we were doing, because they kept looking at this material. So again, this is a very expensive site, but to a layman, they're just seeing a heap of rubbish. And they're asking themselves, why are you putting this rubbish in the middle of such a precious site, you know? And anyway, so we were trying to explain to them, actually the steel fence is going to be part of the pergola. The glass bricks will go over there, the salvage bricks, etc., etc. So this is a bit of just the communique that we were giving to everybody, including where the collapsible shipping containers would be. And then eventually a bit of the renders. So the other thing that we did at this project is there is a food garden. Just remember, so this is a food pavilion, it's a food kiosk, it's a cafeteria, simple cafeteria, a daytime cafeteria, because it's in a corporate area. And the idea is that the spices and the vegetables are grown right next to the site, and then that goes into the cafeteria. Of course, that would not be able to supply all the food that they needed, but it's a bit of a surplus, and it's the gesture. Again, so just imagine of this as a pilot project, speaking to a bigger possibility within the precinct and us carrying through the concept. So we were able to finally bring in food. So you had me talking about energy, water, electricity, and now food comes into the picture. So food is grown here, especially spices, very simple spices and day-to-day using things, and then they go into the cafeteria. That's what the render of what we imagined it after collecting all the materials was like. So that's a bit of the entrance. Obviously, collecting rainwater because we wanted to capture to get the rainwater and use it on the garden. This is a bit of the entrance. So all the wood, taking all the elements and trying to connect them and see how much we could use in the structure. This here, once upon a time, was actually a gate that was thrown out, you know, being able to remodel it and build it in. And you can see the other thing we've done is we've taken all the lessons learned from all the other work. We were not shy about it. So the paper tubes, which were originally a wall, we were able to create a ceiling because we were bringing in light, but it was harsh. So we wanted to filter it. So we used the tubes to actually filter it. All the bricks in this building are recycled. The concrete in this building is recycled for one of the sections. And the windows are all recycled. Let me go to this. So all of it has been brought in. Even the light fittings are recycled. So we pull, and these light fittings are quite old. They're quite popular. I see them also here in Germany. You know, they're like a 60s, 70s kind of light fitting. It's very heavy. But many times people don't want to reuse them, thinking it's a big mission. But all you need to do is actually change the fitting inside. And then the light is beautiful, you know. So we were able to reuse these. This is a bit of the process. So you can see, that's how the concrete comes in. And we were able to crush it to that. And we were able to use crushed glass again. And these here, what you're looking at is 3 different concretes with different strengths, all the way from about 14. In this structure, we needed about 32. And we were trying to see which one we need where. So for the kitchen, for example, and such areas, we needed to make sure that, because it's an industrial kitchen and structural purposes. But there was a lighter one, if you look at it here. So this is for finishes, you know, so that the glass can come out, you can polish it, etc. We also looked at gypsum. Gypsum is a big problem. It's actually one of the bulk materials that comes out of construction sites besides bricks and concrete. It's because all our structures, we do drywalling. And when this stuff comes out, it's just thrown, it's very hard to recycle it because the cement is dead. And what we did there is we took the gypsum boards, we were able to soak them in, take out the paper, create a paste out of it, and we created 3 different possible uses of it as a plaster. So instead of it going into landfill, because nothing grows where gypsum board is put, you can forget about that site. It just blocks everything because of the cement, the dead cement in it, the cement in it. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've been doing in South Africa. And the city of Port Elizabeth was asked at a national level, actually all the cities of South Africa were asked to put forward their best practice. And the city of Port Elizabeth decided to put forward the story that we've been doing on our work, which was very surprising because usually this is a space that is taken by large municipal projects, you know, that are of a certain scale with a certain budget. But they chose to give this story, and I think I know why, because it was very inclusive, you know. So you can see that's me there, they drew me there, you know. I went to the township. As I said, I don't know if I mentioned it in my introduction, I'm actually an academic, a professional associate, but I'm also a practicing architect. So I use both feet to kind of create a social economic impact. So I went to the university. This is where the R&D comes in. I get students on board, and we kind of decide we need to solve how to use this material. And that, you know, you can really get 30 young students with big capacity in terms of exploration, and they solve it while you deal with the boardroom meetings with the municipality and the community and all the stakeholders who have different egos, etc., you know. So you're able to give that opportunity to the university and the students to do what they can do, and then you're able to pull that R&D and bring it back to the community. Obviously, you have to engage the municipality. They will sign off and approve your drawing eventually. So you could, in fact, in my case, I start with them. Right at the beginning, I tell them, guys, I'm coming your way. I have an alternative building, and it will be very hard to approve. Help me get it passed. And we start. Fire is usually the number one thing because everybody thinks a recycled building will catch fire, etc., yet normal buildings also catch fire from the same cause, you know. So just going through those processes, and that very inclusive process essentially, and being able to bring everybody and rally everybody around. So anyway, so this is the cartoon that the city decided to put all the work that we do. Again, I say we because, as you can see, it's very many people who are involved here. NGOs, municipalities, universities, everybody. I'll stop here because the accolades that we have attained, so we've been able to attain quite a number of key accolades. The design Indaba, most beautiful object, as a finalist, was quite a big shock to everybody, including myself, because people suddenly realized that you can do beautiful work with recycled material. But the SAIA 2018 was another award which was very interesting because it's done by property owners, and it's a very coveted award. And in this case, we won it because we talked about inclusivity. So usually the people who talk about property are property owners, right? In this case, we were presenting our community as a property owner, and them just being able to see that and realize what this project was about. And this was best overall transformational project in South Africa 2018. Yeah? So you can imagine we're competing with the who's who in South Africa for this one. Okay, obviously we've won a couple of awards from regional and to national. And I think why I'm telling you this is because they validate and they kind of give other architects how to explain it? They see that it's worth it. You know, it validates the use of the material. It validates the approach of architecture, that it's actually worth investing and putting your entire practice and team into it, because it's really annoying work at times, you know, counting all those bottles and everything, and you have to take a whole team through it, you know. So just the reward of it. And here you can see the story of Kusta Moko and eventually to Gogo Selina's house, which is over there. We've worked with other communities. I spoke about the community center there. And obviously for the university, sorry, give me a second. So for the university, and this is the academic side, the university really repositioning transformative education, again, really looking at education as a tool to creating social economic impact or shifting research to move closer to humanities, because a lot of times our research in academic institutions is based on the funder, and the funder could be anything from motor car industry to a construction company to materials like concrete, brick, etc., etc. I mean, you just go look at PhD research and you'll see what comes out of it, right? So think about it and start shifting it towards humanities, especially in Africa, where we have such a large poverty and such a young population that is doing nothing in terms of being unemployed, you know. So really looking at a kind of architecture that is able to include others, give them the opportunity to have a livelihood, to have a skill, to create a living for themselves is really, really important. And I think that convincing of the architecture schools to get involved. I spoke to TEDx, and this particular TEDx was about innovations in communities, solutions, and because of the work, obviously, I found myself suddenly speaking to the green industry, you know. So this is the Green Innovation Stage in the Green Building Council in 2022. And you can see me over there, but this is a national event with all the green companies and green institutions coming together, and in a corner somewhere is all these community projects that everybody is trying to understand, how did you get here into this space, you know, and just engaging them and looking at possible solutions. Of course, this work is very activist in nature because you're working with communities, and we were able to present at COP27 in Egypt and also rally for those voices of a majority of a population who will never get the opportunity to be in that space and have a cause, you know, whose voices get drowned many times in this kind of meetings by industry, right from our own building industry to the oil industry to et cetera, and there is a lot of competition to speak and get noticed and engage, because the planet operates on very many different systems. And I think the role of this architecture in terms of activism and speaking of a population that needs to be heard also and considered. The project I just spoke about, the last project, you can see it here. It got nominated this year for the Green CONSTRUCT. So we hadn't even finished the project, and already it's starting to create a bit of a buzz, which is really great. It was one of only 3 African projects that were in this. So first of all, the project had to be nominated and they had to be green. So it just cuts off any commercial architecture or just normal architecture. So these are really the green of the green buildings within the various continents that were brought together. And we were able to give a voice to Africa. I'm gonna very quickly go to the video here and show you that last building, just so that you see what it looks like. So because we are architects, I thought let me just show you a bit of a render. So that was the idea. So you can see the building is surrounded in a corporate space. And in that corporate space, in a small garden, we were able to design this garden in a way that spoke to the surrounding buildings. So it's a very low-key building. And maybe that's all it needed to be, a simple structure, very low-key, very functionalistic in nature, but very practical. And again, as I said, we pulled out all the tricks we had learned. We were not shy about it, and we put them in this project. And you can see the materiality of the materiality of it, of the building, and everything from the beams, the columns, the brick, the steel staircase. Yes, we found 3 steel staircases, and we had to choose one. And once you chose it, we had to use it because we can't take it back. Once it arrives on site, it's there, you know. So being able to really modify, and you can imagine just getting this done. This is a lot of people, students actually, helping with this. And this is why I think architecture in terms of practice and academia really comes into place, because young people are suddenly able to engage in industry in a very real project. I'm going to play the next one. Let me just see if it will come on. Okay. Give me a second. Just see something here. So this is the waterfront showcasing the building. They showcased the building in June, which is Green Month. So globally, June is seen as the Green Month. And that was the top project in all their marketing, which I think is very good, because suddenly, as I said, the green agenda is right on the top through a very, very simple, innovative building. And so this is them just telling the public, telling other property owners, telling the city of Cape Town what this building is about, and why they together went for this route. That's the finished building. You can see all the plaster and everything is recycled material. It's a rough building. It's an honest building. It doesn't pretend, you know. That's how the material came out, and that's how we did. Those are windows, by the way, salvage windows that we put together, salvage doors that we put together. I'm going to end by going back to academia and talking to you about students. I know, obviously, I see a lot of, in Germany, students are very much involved in industry. And it's really great because that's the generation that's actually coming over from us, and they will be dealing with the real problem of climate change. And so what I've done is in Port Elizabeth, in Cape Town, you can imagine out of all those materials, once we were done with the building, for us to ensure that this building was net zero waste to landfill, we obviously had some stuff that was left over. So we worked together with a group of students from School of Explorative Architecture that I took on for a design build project. And their mission was to make sure all that stuff that we had not used went somewhere. So we teamed up with an NGO that deals with food, and we realized what they needed is, because it was a big open field, but there was no space for the farmers to showcase their food or be together or have meetings, etc., etc. So what we did here is we went in, and this is actually early this year, for 4 weeks. That's all I gave the students. Design, build, let's get done, and we have to do it. So suddenly, you know, they have to work together, and we really have to execute this project. But anyway, this is what the project is. So we were working in this middle section there. Yeah, also making them push wheelbarrows. Yeah. So you can see bits and pieces of metal, all of it together. All that wood that was left over, these are roof buttons. Took them through the process of cleaning it so that they know what it takes. Yeah. It's a temporary structure. That's why it's built like this, with the idea that when the community is done and they need more space, this thing can actually be moved elsewhere. And they were very eager. They were very excited. They owned the project. Like they were calculating everything. They were buying the materials, you know, which was really, really great. So it's a small structure. It has a kitchen, a sink, a microwave, a small laundry machine. The idea is that when the farmers are working, producing food, they can have a place for meeting, their own meetings, so they're able to come together in a space, use the space in their day-to-day activity. Because what we realize with farming is you start in the morning, and you had better be committed to almost 6 hours minimum for you to be very effective. And that's a lot of time that they spend there. Not to have a facility, and that was what the design challenge to the students was, a space that is usable in different ways, that can create a gathering space, that the farmers can also come with food, warm it, wash dishes, have meetings, etc., etc. And with that, I think I've come to the end of my presentation. That's what I do. I'm very lucky, I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to present to you here in Germany, to give you a bit of a taste of what we are thinking and doing in Africa, right? And also being able to see what's happening in Germany and realizing we're actually doing the same thing. The challenge is the same. Concrete is a material that is everywhere. It's no longer a material that belongs to one part of the world, and being able to just have these exchanges. And as Sasha explained, when I saw Van Bo's work, I was like, I think I can also talk about this subject and see while I'm touring and looking around in Germany to get an idea of how you're tackling recycling and have an exchange of ideas, because I think that is very necessary for us to be able to really, really tackle climate change and to tackle the challenge of waste globally. We need a lot of thinking of minds together, looking at solutions. Why reinvent the wheel when it already has been, a solution has already been done from another part of the world? And that's the power of this generation that's coming right now. They can frog leap. They don't have to keep following traditions of architecture, etc., crafts, etc. They can actually get solutions from everywhere in the world and be able to put it together and create impactful architecture. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very inspiring, Kevin. So, nothing to tell. If you want to ask something, just ask. If not, just come in touch with him and discuss everything. And online, please send us messages or questions, and we try to answer the questions. But for now, just have a nice evening, and you're welcome to eat something, grab you something to drink, and whatever you want. It was nice to have you here, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So maybe the next time.
Yeah.
The next lecture will come.
Sure. Thank you very much.
So. What's here?
So what's your impression so far?
Oh.
Is it doable in Germany with all the
Regulation. I knew that was coming. I think it's doable. It's when I see things like the projects like Circular House and how the whole idea of being able to redefine waste, I think it's a smart way of changing the conversation around waste and shifting it so that people change the terminology and definition of it. Bureaucracy is great, but it also can hamper innovation. I think, speaking from the African perspective, is we have more room, and as you can see with the buildings I've shown you, they're much more experimental, they're much more expressive, and I think that's the joy of being able to practice in South Africa and in Africa and express as much as possible. Also being able to look at the bureaucracy that is here, understand why they're there, because they are there for good reason, by the way, besides being annoying, right? So you're able to foresee what is coming around the corner and incorporate it in one way or the other. So that's my impression so far. It's doable, it's challenging, it's much more challenging obviously in terms of reusing as much as, that building that I'm talking about, 98% recycled, it will probably fall at about 95% recycled, because we've done one which was 70, 80, 90. Gogo Selina's house was 90. So we know we can reach it. I know it is very difficult to attain something like that in the context of in an urban built space like in Europe. Suddenly issues with insurance, issues with legislation, high density, risks is much higher, etc. Not that we don't consider that in Africa, we do, but our densities are different. Our cities expand, and the peri-urban space is not the same. So I think I've taken advantage of that essentially to do as much as we can in that space. Yeah.
But how did you do it financially? How did it work? So, from the German perspective, I would say that it must be much more expensive to build it. At least in Germany, it would be much more expensive because of all the labor you need to clean the bricks, everything. So.
Yeah. It is twofold. It's twofold. So in Africa, we have a lot of labor, which makes it much affordable. In Germany, you use a lot of mechanized system, which makes it very expensive, because if you use labor, it's even more expensive. So our challenge is different there. So budget-wise, just imagine the money that you're using on mechanized labor, putting it back into a community. And I think that's the thing this work is trying to push a lot. So in the various communities, I've been working with artisans, with people who had no jobs, and kind of onboarding them and getting them to build. And as they build, we skill them. And some of them have been able to go on and start their own businesses and get a skill. Budget-wise, it's quite deceiving. And I say that for these two reasons. First of all, these projects have a high R&D, research and development. In fact, RDI, research, development, and innovation, that I'm pushing from the agenda of the university, right? So usually in the real setting, it would happen like the same, but not every architect would be able to have that kind of R&D and support continuously coming in. So there is an R&D component that supports that from the academic space. And the projects usually are placed either in corporate social investment or corporate social responsibilities. That's this funding support. And this is possible through companies that want to see social economic change, whether they're being forced to do it or whether it's really inside them. That's a different conversation, right? But they need to spend the money. That has now shifted to what we're calling ESG, right? So globally, more and more companies are looking at the ESGs and the attraction of ESGs in terms of financing, green financing, which is now fully coming on board. And I think especially that last project I showed at the waterfront, which is a very expensive site. We still cannot believe that they accepted such a project with such a big, reasonably big footprint to go in a place where they could have built a Radisson Red or Blue, This is the project they choose, obviously, because they want to be perceived as a green practice, which they are doing well in. And also, I believe, and from a financing point of view, from looking at the future of where the kind of credit points you will be getting if you want to get a loan. So the financing of the project comes from multiple pools, and then we are able to, it liberates us to be able to really focus on the work that needs to be done, because it's quite extensive. I think the engagement with students makes it also affordable for us, because students, not only from a labor point of view, but from a mind, the brains that they have, they don't have barriers. They're not like practicing architects. After drawing so many doors and windows, you think about the policy before you put the door. They don't have that. So they can think of a door as a window and a window as their minds are still young. The mold is not there. And that enables us to really rethink materials very differently and rethink the formation of that architecture very differently from the traditional methods. Eventually, we somehow have to fall somewhere in the middle because you will have to get these buildings approved. So that's where the conversation with the professional consultant team. So we have QSs, structural engineers, and everybody who comes, the M&E, mechanical and electrical, who has to sign off these buildings. And we have to come together and really try and motivate the client and the municipality. And some areas, some projects we win, they say yes, others they say no. And we just accept them, and it's a win bit by bit. Yeah. Yes, Wambo.
Thank you very much for that inspirational talk. I have a question concerning your project with the waste picker.
Okay.
You said you followed him for 6 months every day, just observing him, guiding him. And I was curious about, because 6 months is a long period. Can you share like a moment which was very special for you, something that you learned while following him? I mean, what did you learn about him or about life or about whatever? Is there a special moment?
Yeah, so I think the one thing, so imagine obviously it was not every day that we were doing this, but we knew his working days. So on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, he was in business. On a Tuesday and Thursday, he was sorting out his waste. On a Friday, he was taking the waste to the NGO that was doing the butter trade, so that he could have all the money that he needed, so that on the weekend, then he could engage in the business of sewing shoes, fixing bikes, etc. So that was part of just understanding how he does this. I think the other thing was just being able to see him, because when you see a waste picker on the streets, you do not see the person behind and the story behind. He had TB. He had overcome very difficult TB, tuberculosis. Yeah, so he was under very heavy meds. But this is a guy who's determined to make life live. And actually, it's one of the reasons which also made us, okay, we need to get this project going, with him. But being able to track him and see his trade and see him as an asset, realizing that he had a family, a wife and a daughter, a grown-up daughter, actually, and just seeing him with his dogs, which he really prided. So what he used to do is bring all the waste to one place, but then at times the community would be naughty and steal some of the material. And that's why he had a lion and lady. So those were the dogs, his dogs, that were guarding his material. So there's a whole system that if you did not really go in and give yourself the time to understand, you wouldn't realize there's a whole ecology in there. And there was the neighbors, and the challenge. That's why you saw us, we designed 2 recycling carts. The first time we thought we were just going to rebuild the one he did, make it work, and that was it. But when we got in, we realized actually it would not be able to go in the township spaces. So, and that came out of being able to step back and really track and realize there's almost like a 900 millimeter rule within the township spaces where we wanted this cut to go, and that's the maximum if he was going to pull anything, So looking at the routes that he was going to use, understanding how he collects, how he moves it to the one point, and then creating the second bicycle where then he could move all of that stuff to the recycling facility. So the magical moments were spending the weekend with him, you know, having a drink, him giving us stories about when he was young, you know, that's with me and the team. By the way, we built him, the Westcott, we built him a studio and a house. That was the prototype houses before we built Selina a house. So we were able to, it's just, I can't show you all the projects we do, right? So we were really able to understand him, understand the challenge, and realize for someone who's living with TB in a house where there's moisture, that's a problem. So we actually built him a new home from the recycled material. We were able to really try impact him as much as we could, and with the little that we could inject him, hope that he could then impact the neighbors, you know. And I think that the attitude of waste pickers, because we were working with this other NGO that was doing the waste trade with him, really changed. People started realizing they can make a living out of waste, you know. And you can also, in this case, he became a bit of a celebrity, you know. So he became the image of recycling. For me, it's many moments just from seeing him, tracking him for 6 months. That's just to understand the business. And then there was to do the design. The design was another 3 months because it's getting the design, making sure it works, prototyping it. Some fail, some work, you know, modifying, etc. So I think it's just the lesson learned from it is when you're getting into this kind of projects, you cannot think of it in the conventional mindset of an architect with a normal timeline, you know, because many times the clients who come to us give us a budget, give us a timeline, and we know everything will fit in there. And if it doesn't, hire more people. You just need to deliver. Get the contractor, get 3 contractors, etc., etc. With this kind of social architecture is very different because your perception of assets is both from an architecture point and engineering point of understanding what you're seeing, but the social side of it has to be really, really high to be able to tap in and create a meaningful challenge. Yeah. I think there was one question there.
Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
In a regular design process, you come up with an initial idea, and then you involve all the engineers, like structural engineers, and like this. All right, sorry. And then ideally, you come up with finished executional plans and give them to the contractor, and he builds this. So apparently, this is not really possible with the work you are doing, is it? So how do you do it? How do you skip back and forth to design again and go back to the structural engineers, ask, we're not getting any steel beams this size, what can we do? You know, it's like, how do you manage this process of working with material that is might not be available readily like other stuff?
So I've been fortunate to work with the same team of professional consultants right from the beginning of our projects. So within them, they've already known that we're going to push the boundary with the next one and the next one. But as you can see, our beginning phase was very humble. It was very simple. It was very much the structural engineer having the faith and trust that we could do what we were saying we could do with these beams, etc., and creating the tests, showing him the results, and proving it was doable. So that was right at the beginning. This last project that you saw, everybody could believe that we could do it already. And, so because we'd already done 5 projects that were increasing in terms of possibility. So having a professional consultant team that we worked with continuously helped a lot. The design process is different for sure because the simpler projects like the Westcott and all, that was a little bit, I must tell you, it was quite frustrating for the students with the Westcott. I'm just thinking in retrospect here, because when we started designing it, they came with a full design. And for me, that was part of the learning curve. So I told them, thank you very much for your designs and everything. I put them down. Let's go to the field. Let's see how this works. And going back, but they're like, no, but we solve it. I'm like, yeah, you're solving it without him. We need to really understand what we're doing. So it moved from this very fancy, architect design, product design kind of things to much more realistic to him. And that's the rule that applied as I scale up. With the bigger buildings, what happened was like any project, so in South Africa we have 6 stages of execution from an architecture point of view. So you have the stage 1, 2, and 3, which is where you have your design to municipal submission level. And the first 2 stages, we keep them very loose. And what I mean by that is we have a concept, we know it will be from recycled material, and we tell the client right from the beginning, you're not going to get your final design now. All we're doing is going out to look for the material, but we can give you conceptual designs. So conceptual designs kind of talk about the area, because we know the client needs X amount of square meterage. We know the building lines, they're not going to change. So those are the areas that you cannot win with the municipality unless you have a really, really good argument. So we work within those parameters, and that parameter could create a box. Let me put it that way. And you kind of create an impression of what those boxes could look like in terms of a recycled material, because you do not know what it is. So in the last project, we created, I think we have up to 10 revisions of design, but the way we did the revision process, it was always an improvement of the other. So the very first ones, the first 3 were purely conceptual, no commitment to them. And then when we got to council, we now tested the water with a very loose design, which is the one that was kicked out, right? So we looked at what they were, we overlooked things like fire for them, etc., and we had to redesign. And what we did in this building is we created a firebox so that we could just solve all the fire problems, you know, and then we kept the rest of the building loose. So that's how that design ended up being. But originally that entire design was meant to be very flamboyant and recycled material, etc., but we had to negotiate it. So with that design process, then we are able to know that we will need members that span 12 meters, that's for sure. So from a structural engineer point of view, we know for us to have a free space which is clear of beams, etc., we have certain dimensions we have to work. And as we are looking at the recycling and demolition areas, we can already identify material. So we can see, okay, that's wood, we can laminate those. There's some beams, they're not so great, you know, there's too much work on bending them, maybe we cut them short and use somewhere. So it's a bit of you start with a design that is very conceptual, and whereas in a normal conventional building process, you have a very finished design by the middle. For us, we don't, because you still need to figure out the material. The inventory, which is all your material, once it comes together, and I think that's the lesson we've learned now. When we start a project, we create a material inventory, because that there is what determines your design. It determines how far you can span, what you can build, etc. So we start going through that process very quickly. In this case, we put that in at times even in Revit, because you know what you work, you actually know the material, and you can start testing the properties through BIM, etc. And eventually you end up with a design. What's interesting though is, in this obviously design process, is we had to submit an as-built design, because the design was changing even as we were building, because suddenly we realized, actually, you know, that street pole light which was pulled down, we can actually put it in a building and make it look cool. I'm giving an example of a fan pad. Or we realized that the spanning members of a floor were not thick enough, and we had to add steel at the bottom. So, and that was a decision we made on site when we realized that there was an additional support required. You know, so we modify the design as we go, and then once that is done, we prepare a full package and submit that back again. So we've literally done 3 submissions, but that's the process essentially. So it's a bit of a organic, almost semi-organic, which is unusual for architecture, but I think it's the only way you can do it with recycled material. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks also for the lecture. really fascinating. I love this systems thinking throughout all the projects. And I guess I'm wondering, as you're like approaching the demolition sites or some of these manufacturers and other people that are kind of coming from the outside, like what would be your tips to other practitioners to get people on board? Or is it because of your connection through the university that you're able to convince them to work on the project? Yeah, what does it take to talk to people that are not familiar with this way of working?
I think a bit of good HR skills, human relation skills, really does help. What I mean by that is being able to blend in wherever you're required is really crucial. And I think, interestingly, architects are one of the few trades that are able to speak different languages. So there's a language when you speak when you're with the council. You know, it's a no-nonsense boardroom meeting where they don't have time. They have many drawings to go, you know, so you're able to very quickly lock into that. But at the same time, you're able to think about the engineers, you're able to think with students in the fluidity that they require, and you're able to think with a client. A client, by the way, in some of the projects, the client is not the end user. The client is the person who's providing the money. The end user is a community. And many times the client and the end user have different conflicting ideas, you know. So being able to speak to all these voices. And I think as architects, it's inherent with us in the practice of building. If you're an architect that is involved from design to the actual realization, you will meet the client. You will go for that municipal submission meeting where your drawings get kicked out, right? You will meet a difficult client. You'll meet an easy client. And I think that process and just accepting that and then stretching it further to thinking about very simple things like the construction team. And what I mean by that is I made the students in this project you saw at the end, I made them push those cement bags so that the next time they design a building without thinking of how that material, you know, it's very practical things because they've never pushed a cement bag or two in their life, right? And suddenly the appreciation of construction workers just changes because at times we just don't think about them, right? And I think the other is things like engaging with the end user to grow their empathy and sympathy. Being able to have soft skills to negotiate with contractors. Contractors have a very tight deadline and it's a high risk job. And being able to get to a demolition site the first day and just do nothing and just respect the work. Instead of going in and, oh, I want that, which was my first experience, right? I went into a demolition site and I was kind of picking things and the guys were just looking at me like, oh, really? Yeah? Okay. And as I watched, the wrecking ball went through it. They're like, who are you? The client paid for this. And if this exceeds this time, the client needs, he needs to give us that in writing. And suddenly I'm just thrown back and I start realizing, okay, there's contractual agreements. We need to understand what these contractual agreements are and we need to negotiate with the contractor and the client, you know. So having those conversations and being really aware of everybody and then being able to now negotiate with the contractor after you've put out the fire on his bum. The fire on his bum is that the client is paying him for X amount of time, and that's what he wants. And maybe you might be able, if he's sympathetic to your project, give you a Saturday, which he usually doesn't come, which is the day that the material is collected. So being able to negotiate with them and just seeing them from a human point of view and from the difficulty of the job and the risk and appreciating that. So the next time I went to a demolition site, because there were 9 of them, the next demolition site, I did not talk. As I said, I was there for a day, understood what they were doing, and then gradually I was like, oh, so who's the foreman, all right? And, you know, kind of mapping the area, knowing who's who, and then approaching them eventually. So I think it's what I meant by HR is just being able to understand very quickly the system, the machine of architecture, right from council to demolition to execution, and knowing how to tweak it here and there to be able to do it. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question, huh? Okay. Is that it? Thank you. I think I'm done.